Ruth retired at 64 with $410,000. She died at 79 with $437,000. 15 years. 15 winters with the thermostat at 66 because the furnace was original to the house and she never found out what a new one cost. Store brand coffee. A 2009 Camry with a check engine light she treated as decorative. A kitchen drawer full of rubber bands sorted by size. Every December telling her son she didn't need anything. She finished $27,000 ahead of where she started. In the bottom drawer of her desk, folded in half, there was a printed itinerary. 9 days in Ireland. $6,200, all in, printed in 2018. Never booked. Here's the part that should bother you. Ruth wasn't confused. She wasn't senile, she wasn't scammed, and she was never once broke. Ruth did exactly what she was told to do for 40 years, and the reward was dying with the receipt for a life she never took. My name is Nick, and I spend an unreasonable amount of time reading retirement data that nobody asked me to read. If you've ever wondered why the people who saved the hardest seem to enjoy it the least, hit subscribe and leave a like, because today we're figuring out why you will almost certainly never spend the money you are currently killing yourself to save. And before you decide this is a video about your parents, understand something. The habit that trapped Ruth doesn't show up at 65. It's the one you're building right now every time you move money into an account you've been told never to touch. The ears table that governed Ruth's money already has your name on it. Same table, same math, you're just further up the page. So let's start with the uncomfortable reality. Ruth is not a sad exception. Ruth is the base case. The Employee Benefit Research Institute has been following the same households for decades, watching what retirees actually do with their money rather than what they tell a survey they'll do, which are two very different genres of fiction. And you should know what they found, because it's going to describe you. Retirees who walked in with $500,000 or more spent down 11.8% of it. Not per year. Total, over 20 years. 11.8%. 20 years. They died holding roughly 88% of what they retired with after 2 decades of deciding they couldn't justify the nicer hotel. And it gets weirder, which I promise is the last time I'll say that unironically. Roughly 1/3 of retirees in that data had more money later in retirement than on the day they retired. Not the same. More, they spent 18 years accidentally growing their savings, which is a genuinely impressive thing to do by mistake. Now, you might be thinking this is just what old people are like. Depression-era instincts, thrift as a personality trait. Fair, except the pattern isn't evenly distributed, and where it splits tells you who's responsible. I'll warn you now, it isn't the retirees. In that same data, retirees with a pension saw their savings drop about 4% over 18 years. Retirees without one, holding the same money, dropped 34%. Same age. Same country. Same grocery prices. One group barely touched their savings, the other ate through 1/3 of it, and the only difference was the shape of the income. That's not a personality difference, that's a plumbing difference. And it points at the thing that's actually going to do this to you. Here's the thing about a pension that you never appreciate until it's gone. A pension is a permission slip. It shows up on the first whether you live to 70 or 107, and it doesn't care what the market did in October. You cannot spend it wrong, because there's no principle to accidentally destroy. So your grandfather looked at the check, saw a number, and spent the number. Money in, money out. Simple, your 401k is not a permission slip. Your 401k is a pop quiz you take every morning for 30 years, and nobody ever tells you the answer. Because to spend a lump sum correctly, you need 3 things. What the market returns for the rest of your life, what your medical costs will be, and the date you're going to die. Read that back. We took a job once done by actuaries with mortality tables and entire departments of professionals and handed it to you. A person with a job and a commute. Good luck, don't get it wrong, no do-over. Congratulations on your empowerment, you get to pick your own funds. In 1980, about 38% of private sector workers had a pension. Today, it's in the mid-teens. That didn't change a product. That moved an enormous, unhedgeable risk off institutions that could pool it and onto you. So let's watch somebody sit the pop quiz because your turn is coming. Jean and Denise both retired at 65. 600,000 between them in a 401k, about 45,000 a year in social security. No pension, paid off house, no debt. Jean kept every appliance manual he ever owned in a milk crate in the garage, which tells you most of what you need to know about Jean. They go looking for the rule because there's always a rule. They find the 4% rule. Take 4% in year one, adjust for inflation after. 4% of 600,000 is 24,000 a year plus social security. And they're at 69,000. That's a good life. Except Jean reads a little more the way you do at 11 at night when you should be asleep, and now he has a problem. Bill Bengen, who invented the 4% rule, has since said 4% was always the worst case, never the target. He now puts it nearer 4.7 and argues plenty of retirees could take 5 or more. Morningstar, running forward-looking numbers, published about 3.9 for anyone retiring this year, so your experts land between 3.3 and 5.5%. On $600,000, that spread is $20,000 a year. That's the entire difference between a retirement with airline tickets in it and one without. And here's what you'll do with that range, because it's what everybody does. You won't take the average. You'll take the lowest number, because the lowest number can't get you in trouble. Jean and Denise settle on 3.5%, $21,000 a year. And they feel responsible about it, which is the cruelest part. Because feeling responsible is a genuinely pleasant feeling, and it costs them a decade of experiences to have it. There's also a second number in Jean's head, a figure he's decided can never be touched, ever. He's never said it out loud, not even to Denise. Hold on to that, because when you see what it is, you're going to recognize it. Now at this point, you'd expect the government to step in and fix all this, and here's the fun part. It technically tried. There's a law forcing money out of your retirement accounts. Required minimum distributions starting at 73, which sounds like your solution, right? The federal government legally mandating that you spend your savings. Problem solved, everybody go home. Look at the arithmetic. At 73, the ears divides your balance by 26.5. That's 3.77%. So on Jean and Denise's 600,000, the government's mandated minimum is about $22,600, which is less than the 4% rule would have handed them 8 years earlier. Sit with that. The RMD isn't the government encouraging you to enjoy yourself. The RMD is the government tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, remember that tax bill you deferred in 1991? Yeah, it's time. And here's what you'll do with it. You'll take the RMD, only the RMD, and treat it as the number, not a floor, a ceiling. Because it came in an official envelope, and official envelopes feel like instructions. Ruth did exactly that. 15 years, 15 envelopes, 15 minimums, never $1 more. She thought she was following the rules. She was following a tax collection schedule, so why not override it? I mean, you can. It's your money. Nobody's stopping you. Which brings us to the part that has nothing to do with math. Allianz runs a retirement study every year, and this year, 67% of Americans said they're more afraid of running out of money than of dying. Read that again. 2 out of 3 people looked at the 2 available outcomes and decided death was the manageable one. That was 57% in 2022. It's climbing. And there's a mechanical reason you'll feel it too. You spend 40 years training one muscle. Save more, spend less. Balance goes up, you did good. Balance goes down, you screwed up. Do that for 4 decades and it stops being a strategy and becomes a moral framework. Then, on a Friday afternoon, somebody wheels out a sheet cake with your name on it, and on Monday, you're supposed to use the opposite muscle, at full strength, correctly for the rest of your life. And you have never once used it. There is no cake for that. It shows up in a specific way. You'll spend interest, you'll spend dividends, you'll spend your Social Security check to the last dollar without blinking, but your principal goes in a mental drawer marked "Do Not Touch." It's why you'll happily spend a $400 dividend and refuse to sell $400 of the fund that paid it, which is the same money wearing a different hat. So the first time you watch that balance go down and it registers not as the plan working, but as failure, loss aversion does what it always does. Losses land twice as hard as gains. Every withdrawal feels like a small wound. Every month you skip one feels like a win. Run that 240 times and you get Ruth with an itinerary in a drawer. Jean and Denise aren't immune either. Their portfolio grew last year and they celebrated. Two people in their late 60s at a kitchen table celebrating the fact that they had successfully failed to use their own money. And I want you to know what this actually feels like. Because it isn't dramatic, it never feels like suffering. It feels like reading the menu right to left. It feels like your daughter offering to fly you out for the weekend and you saying next month, next month, next month for 11 months. It feels like standing in the appliance aisle doing math on a dishwasher while the salesman gives up on you. It's not misery. It's a slow, comfortable, permanent no. You'll never actually spend it. Not because you can't. Because nobody ever gave you permission to. Somewhere in America right now, there's a retiree with $1.2 million driving to a second grocery store because the chicken is $1 cheaper. That is not a character flaw. That is a system output. Now, here's where I have to be fair with you. Because there's a version of this video that says, just spend it, you'll be fine. That version is lying to you. The fear isn't irrational. It's pointed at one specific thing, and that thing is real. Long-term care. The most recent Genworth survey puts assisted living around $70,000 a year and a private nursing homeroom near $127,000. Medicare does not cover this. Medicare covers approximately none of this, along with your teeth, your eyes, and your ears, which is a delightful thing to discover at 78, and you can't reliably insure against it. In 2000, more than 100 companies sold long-term care insurance. Today, fewer than a dozen. The rest priced it wrong, took enormous losses, and left. What's left raises your premiums after you've bought in and denies roughly half of applicants over 70. So it's insurance you can only comfortably buy while you obviously don't need it. Great business model if you're the one selling it. Then add Fidelity's estimate that you and a spouse need roughly $345,000 for healthcare, a figure that excludes long-term care entirely. Then add a trustee's report that has Social Security's retirement fund running dry in 2032. So when you hoard, you're not being silly and you're not being cowardly. You're self-insuring against a risk the insurance industry itself looked at and decided was too dangerous to touch. That's a rational response to an irrational system. You didn't fail a test. You were handed an actuary's job with no training and no tools and told the penalty for error was dying poor. And one more thing plainly, because these numbers cut both ways. Roughly 43% of American households aged 55 to 64 have nothing at all in a retirement account. Nothing. Nearly half of Americans die with under $10,000. Mostly because they never accumulated it, not because they spent it. If that's you, this video isn't about you, and I won't pretend otherwise. Your problem is the opposite one, and it's harder. But if you've got a real balance and you're rationing it, that risk deserves an honest look. About 70% of 65-year-olds will need some long-term care. True, and it's the number that gets quoted at you, but it counts your daughter helping you up the stairs. Narrow it to years of paid care, and it collapses. Only 4 to 5% need 5 years or more. Which brings us back to the number in Jean's head, $300,000. Half of everything they have walled off against an outcome that hits one household in 20. He's never said it out loud because saying it out loud would make it sound like what it is, which is a man mortgaging 30 definite years to fund one unlikely one. He has set it to a spreadsheet. Spreadsheets don't argue back, which is the entire reason we like them. And here's the bill for that insurance policy which nobody ever puts on your statement. JP Morgan tracks real spending across millions of accounts. At 60 to 64, you'll spend about $75,000 a year. By 90 to 94, about 52. Your spending falls more than 30% between 60 and 85, and not because you discover discipline at 81. It's because the money stops converting. There's a window where a dollar buys a hiking trip in Utah and a window where it buys a stair lift. Those are not the same dollar. And the whole tragedy of the 401k is that it trains you to protect the dollar and tells you absolutely nothing about the window. Run that against Jean and Denise. They took 3.5% instead of 5, and they'll tell you they're being careful. What they actually did was move $18,000 a year out of their 60s and into their late 80s. On a spreadsheet, that's neutral. In a life, it isn't, because 67-year-old Jean can carry a suitcase up the stairs of a rental in Lisbon. And 89-year-old Jean is negotiating with a podiatrist. They didn't save that money, they rescheduled it into a version of themselves who can't use it. Ruth never got to reschedule anything. She spent 15 years rationing against a nursing home she never saw the inside of. Stroke in February, dead in March. The money went to her son Curtis, who's 58, owns his house outright, and has a 401k of his own that's doing fine. Curtis didn't need it. Curtis needed it in 1996 when he was working 2 jobs and the transmission went. He got it at 58, which is about when most Americans receive an inheritance, if they get one at all. Only about 30% ever do. So the money took a 15-year journey from a woman who wouldn't spend it to a man who didn't need it, and the only thing it ever purchased was 9 days in Ireland that nobody took. If you're sitting there right now feeling something uncomfortable about your own parents or about yourself, hear this clearly. Nobody in this story did anything wrong. Ruth was disciplined. Jean is careful. Curtis is grateful. Every one of them followed the instructions they were given, and the instructions were incomplete. You were taught how to fill the account. Nobody taught you how to open it. Oh, and quickly, while we're on the subject of building something while you still can, I opened a school community where I break down how to build and scale a faceless YouTube channel. After running more than 10 successful channels, I'm putting every strategy in there and walking you through it step by step. If you'd like a second income stream long before you're the one filling out withdrawal forms, come find me in there. So, what do you actually do about this? First, build a floor before you worry about the ceiling. The best annuity available to you is delaying Social Security to 70. It's inflation adjusted, federally backed, and every year you wait past 62 adds roughly 7 to 8% to the check permanently. It is essentially the pension your grandfather had, except you build it yourself out of spite and patience. Spending your savings from 65 to 70 to buy a bigger guaranteed check for life isn't depleting your portfolio. It's converting it into the thing that let your grandfather relax. Watch what that does for Jean and Denise. Draw down harder for 5 years to delay both checks, and the guaranteed money underneath them covers taxes, insurance, utilities, and groceries permanently. The moment your floor covers your fixed costs, your portfolio stops being your survival and becomes your fun money. Same dollars, different job description. And suddenly, you don't have to be brave to book a flight. Second, once that floor is built, the money above it is spendable. Say that sentence out loud, because your brain will not believe it silently. Third, the years between when you stop working and when you turn 73 are the most valuable tax window of your life. Low income, no forced withdrawals, that's when Roth conversions cost you least, and also conveniently while your knees still work. Fourth, if you're leaving money behind anyway, hand some over while you're alive to watch it land. $20,000 is a rounding error to a 58-year-old and a life-changing event for a 30-year-old. You're allowed to be in the room for that. Just so we're clear, I'm not a financial advisor and this isn't financial advice. This is a video about data and incentives, and your numbers are yours. And if you want to talk the building side through with people doing the same thing, that school community is waiting. But here's the question I'd sit with. It's the one Ruth never asked, and it's the one that would have cost her nothing to ask. You've spent your entire life asking whether you can afford to spend the money. Nobody ever asks the other one. What is it costing you not to?